my fellow comic book collectors. This is Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is a response video. So recently, Regie Collects made a really interesting video where he was talking about the common expression that we use in the comic book collecting hobby, and that is a low grade is better than no grade. That's the expression that we all use. And he was really trying to figure out what that expression means. First of all, he was suggesting that low grade, well, what is a low grade? Is it, a 2.0? Is it a 1.0? Is it a 5.0? It really depends on the book, and age. So like a modern book, well, anything probably below a 7 would be considered a low grade, just because there are so many modern books in high grade. If you're looking at silver, maybe a low grade would be a 3 or less. If you're looking at golden, maybe 2 or less, or 1 and less, just like pretty much barely a copy. So the definition of low grade is kind of relative, but actually I don't think that detracts from the expression. And he was really bothered by that part of it. But I actually like the fact that it is relative, because it really does depend on what you're collecting, what is considered a low grade. The other point that he made was that if you bought, for example, he mainly focused on more the modern books, but as a Golden Age collector, I kind of focus more on the Golden Age. So he was focusing on the modern books, and he was talking about how if you bought, say, a modern book, and you bought it during the hype of the market, and you were like, oh, I just want to get the book. I just want to have that placeholder in my collection, and I want to get any grade. Any grade will do, just because I want to get the book. And you end up buying like a 5.0, let's say. And, and you're not super happy with it because it's a modern book. It's kind of a low grade because, as I said, below a 7 for modern is kind of a low grade. But it is a placeholder. You have the book. You can say, hey, look, I have the book. And you're like, but you're not quite happy with it. Or if you buy like maybe an older book and it's like really just beaten up, doesn't present well, and you're like, oh, I really don't like this, but I have the book. And you're always looking at it, and it's always like a little bit off looking. Well, that's the low grade. That's the feeling that you might have with those lower grades. And you might be thinking, oh, if I just paid an extra $100 or $200, I could have had that higher grade. And his reasoning was this, that let's say that low grade was $100, and to get it in a grade that you would have liked was $200. So $100 more, like, double your money basically, to get that higher grade that you would have liked. Well, here's the situation. The market dropped and those low grades are now worth like maybe $40 to $50, and that high grade is now worth $100. So had you just not spent your money, you could have bought that higher grade without having placed your money into that book, and therefore you would have been fine. You could have just bought that higher grade when the market crashed. And so there is some sound reasoning to that, but one major point that he missed in that kind of logic is the fact that we don't have a crystal ball. So a lot of the time, like, I kind of predicted that the market would crash. And if you watch one of my old videos, I talk about the fact I think the market's going to crash. But not everybody has that sense of the market. And especially when week over week, the books seem to be constantly going up, it's very scary for people that want to get a book, where you might feel like it's just going to keep on going up, and it's going to keep on going up and up and up, and you're never going to get that book. So sometimes you'll say, well, low grade is better than no grade, because, it's like I can chase that high grade, but you never know. It's just going to keep on going up. And that can be the case. And there are books that even to this day haven't gone down. So, and even those lower grades have gone up. So without having that crystal ball where oh, this book's like, you just wait 5 months and it'll crash. Well, we don't always know that. So it's really hard to make that kind of guess. Well, should I wait and save my money so that I can get it at a higher grade later? Or, should I buy it now and not miss out on that book that I really want? And that's where the no grade, is better. Low grade is better than no grade comes in. It's that feeling that we get as collectors that we want to get the book. We really want this book. It's not like it's not like the FOMO feeling as much. It's more that we want this book. This is something that we want in our collection, but we don't really worry about the grade as much. We just want to have the book, and that's the feeling of low grade is better than no grade. Another thing that often happens, and this is kind of interesting about the low grades versus the high grades. So his price thing was that the high grade would have dropped down to 100 and the low grade would drop down to 50, right? Well, actually that doesn't necessarily play out as much as people think. Often what you'll see is the biggest price drops are in the higher grades, and the where there's less of a price drop is in the lower grades. So I did a series on low grades as an investment. And one of the things that I noticed was even during the market corrections, the low grades actually didn't lose as much. Maybe the high grade would lose 60, 70% of the value, but the low grades would only lose maybe 30 to 40%. And you're probably wondering, why is that? Why is it that the low grades don't lose as much value as the high grades? Well, one of the reasons for that is that collectors still have this feeling of no grade, low grade is better than no grade. So there's a lot of competition at those lower grades where people just want to get that book. So what ends up happening is the lower grades will hold their value more than the higher grades because it's an entry level, and there's a lot more people in that entry level market. So it's supply versus demand, supply and demand situation. Well, there's a lot more demand at that lower price point. And what can happen is, let's say the books do come down in price. What you'll see when that happens is what's called price compression, where the difference between any two grades might be very, very little in terms of price. And if you actually bought that low grade copy, when the market crashes, you lose a bit of money, just like everyone else. Everyone loses money on it. However, your book can actually convert to a higher grade cheaper. So what you can do is you can use your low grade to grade up, and the cost difference might not be as bad as if you had just bought that high grade in the first place. So you might actually be able to upgrade your book for cheaper than when the market was hot and that book was just so priced out of your range. So often the case is actually getting that low grade versus no grade might actually set you up for future opportunities where if the market goes up, you at least have the book. If the market comes down, you can upgrade into those higher books easier. So just something to consider, because just because the market crashes, there's still value in those low grades. They don't instantly lose their value. And often, as I said, they can hold their value slightly better than those high grades, which is interesting, but it does happen. And there's another thing that often people don't realize. If you're a golden age collector like myself, there's a whole different attitude towards a low grade versus no grade. And the difference is this, that as a golden age collector, sometimes you might never see that book. You might see it once, and that's your opportunity to buy that book. And sometimes when you see the book, it is in low grade. I just picked up a book, Our Gang #1, and it's the first appearance of Tom and Jerry. My copy is a 1.5, maybe a 2.0 at the best, in that range. It's a pretty beaten up copy. But that is a book that I've seen 3 times on auction. That's it. And that's over a period of 40 years. So, you get what you get sometimes, like, and it's one of those things, like, you have to, if you really want that book, if you want that book in your collection. I wanted Tom and Jerry's first appearance in my collection. Sometimes you have to be a little less fussy about grade and just say, well, if I really want it, yes, it's going to be more of a rough copy, but at least I have the book in my collection. And another thing with me is I would actually take the slogan one step further and say a restored copy is better than no copy. So I actually will buy restored books as well. So a lot of people really don't like restored books, and they're considered low grade, even though they might present really well. They might be a high grade restored book, but they consider them a low grade because they are restored. But often the case is this, that if you buy a restored book, you can get the book for a big cost savings. Like my Wonder Woman 1 is a book that is a 7.5. It is extensively restored. Nothing added to the book, but the reason it's considered extensively restored is it's trimmed on all 3 sides. It is what it is. It's restored book. However, presents really, really well. It's a shame that they cut the 3 sides. Now, that book is like a $10,000 plus book in the grade that I bought it. It's probably more like $30,000 in that price, in that grade. However, if it wasn't restored in a 7.5, it would go for crazy money, like $100,000 to $200,000, in that range. So just getting the book and getting a very nice presenting book is better than not getting the book at all. And the funny thing was, I paid around $17,000-18,000 for it, and there was actually a low grade copy that sold for around the same, a 0.5 sold. That was the same price as what I paid. So I'm sometimes you can even get a nice presenting copy for cheaper than that low grade copy. So you can, using this idea of a low grade versus no grade, you can kind of, if you add restored to it, it becomes even cooler, where you can get some cool looking books, really nice presenting, and at a good price. And ultimately, that's what this whole expression really comes down to. What can I afford when I want to buy a book that I want? And that's why it's such a popular expression, because a lot of the time we are comic collectors. We want to buy 1,000 different books, and we don't necessarily have millions and millions of dollars to spend on the hobby, but we still want to buy all those books. And that's where, if you really want to get all those cool books, sometimes budget has to come into play. And you got to think, well, I could get 9/8 of 5 books, and spend all my money on those 5 books, or I could maybe look at lower grades and get 100 different books. So sometimes that's kind of the consideration that collectors will make. And that's where this expression really comes into play, is that a low grade is better than no grade. It's just that you allocate money, and sometimes you want to have many different books in your collection, and getting the lower grades helps you to afford more variety within your collection. You know, it'd be cool to have like, you know, a high grade, you know, Detective 27, for example. But, you know, that might be the only book you ever own. You know, and you might be still mortgaging your house and you know, or selling your house actually, to get it. You know, it's like one of those things where, you know, you got to think of practicality with it. And often it is, we want to have not just the one book. It's nice to have that one book, but it's also cooler to have a lot of variety in our collection. We want to see lots of books. Like, you know, there's not that many collectors that only have just one book in their collection. You know, the collector gene doesn't allow that. You know, we want to have lots of books in our collection. And often the only way to do that is to kind of sacrifice on the grade, depending on our budget. So this has been my response to Reggie's thing. He was kind of very down on the expression. I actually think it's a very good philosophy to go into the hobby with, because it allows you to kind of be realistic about what grades to chase after. And that's the real important part of this, that you have to be realistic based on your budget. And you say, well, I could go for that high grade, but I have to make sacrifices. Now, if you really want that high grade, make the sacrifices. But if you just want to get the book in your collection, and because it's a cool book that you really love, and your budget doesn't allow you to buy that high grade, well, low grade is better than no grade. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope Regie Collects sees this video. I don't think he will, but if he does, hopefully he'll comment in the comments below and give me his feedback about my reaction to his video. And if you guys can kind of hint to him that I posted this video, that would be cool too. If you liked this video, please give me a like. And if you didn't like the video, don't put anything. Just and if you have any feedback for me about what I said, please put it in the comments below. And please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.